On this channel, $1 Million Made Easy, we love to run numbers for people. I recently saw a headline that says 80% of Americans do not have $100,000 in their retirement savings. And I thought, well, that can be a problem if somebody enters retirement with less than 100,000. But let's just look at somebody like Charlie Munger said, the first 100,000 is the hardest to accumulate. But let's say you have some time and let's say you can save $200 a month. That'd be $2,400 a year. How long would it take you to get to 100,000 if you got a 3.6% return on your money? Well, if you look down through here, it's 26 years. Now you may ask, well, why did I pick 3.6%? Because I recently saw this graph. Somebody ran this for a 20-year annualized return by asset class, and they said this was a while back, but they said the average investor averaged 3.6%. When you do that, it takes you 26 years just saving $200 a month to get to this. And after 30 years, this is the amount of money you'd put in, the blue right here. After 30 years, you would have put in 57% of the money. Your money would have earned 42% of that, and you'd have 125,000 after 30 years. This is the 26-year column here. This is the 30-year graph here. But look at the difference it makes. 3.6% on your money. What happens if you can get 6% on your money? Watch these numbers change. Again, we'll be looking at a 30-year graph because we're just assuming a 30-year working career. We could also look at the 40, but what if we change this to 6%? Watch these numbers change. Right now it's 125,000, and you can see the graph right here. Change this to 6% return, and look at the difference. Now you're up to 189,000, of which you put in 37%, the blue here, and your money earns 62%. Well, why am I running at 6%? When most financial channels have you run it at 7 and 8%. Let's go ahead and run it at 8%. And that's assuming you're putting some money in the stocks anyway. 8%, now you're up to 271,000 over a 30-year period, of which 26% of the money you put in, and look at this, almost 3 times that amount is what your money earned. Look at the difference between 3.6% and 8%. Well, let me just show you one other thing that's very, very important. I recently saw this stat. They said the average American retiree has $170,000 in retirement savings, and that's a decrease from 2022. But their recommendation is $555,000 when you go to retire, which they say that's 10 times your annual salary. So if you were making $55,500, that'd be this. And they said only 12% of retirees get to that. That's 555,000. Let me show you one more thing here. This is stats from the Vanguard. They said the average account balance for a 65-plus-year-old was $87,000. That's the average. Excuse me, the median. The average is 279,000. That's a number that was sticking in my head, the 279,000. Because if we go back here and look at this. 30 years and 8% interest, you'd have 271,000 after 30 years. You can see the graph right here. So that's why I was interested in what this 271,000 is, because again, right here, that was the average. So if somebody was making a lot more, had a lot more than this, that the median would be only 87,000, but the 279,000 was the average. So somebody was probably have an account balance of $1 million. So it bring this 87,000 up to an average of 279,000. Hopefully I'm not losing you. But again, here's what I also want you to see. 93% of the time, these mutual funds that people invest in, they underperform the comparison index. So what do? We like to run the S&P 500. Look what happens if we run it at just 9.5%. Watch the numbers change. We're looking at 8%. Look at the 9.5%. 9.5. Now look at the 30-year column. 359,000 after 30 years. And if you can stick with it, if say you're age 25 when you started saving $200 a month, for 40 years you'd have $927,000. Now, most people aren't going to stay at this $200 level. What if we just inflate that by 2% a year? In other words, $2,400 the first year. I'm going to change this to an inflated 2%. Now you're $2,400, $2,448, $2,497 going down through there. Look at what happens over a 40-year period. $1.136 million. You start this one age 20, 25, age 65, this is the kind of money you'd have. Most full retirement age for Social Security is 67. So if you started this when you're 27 years old, saving this $200 a month, increasing that by 2% a year, put it in this and get this 9.5%. That's what it averaged over that 20-year period that we looked at. But I want you to notice something else. I actually ran the numbers for every single year using the S&P 500 numbers for the last 100 years. If you can be in it 30, 35, and 40 years, look at the median average, 12.35. The lowest you're going to see for a 35-year average was 11.15. What if we change that right here? Again, this is the worst case scenario, folks, for a 35-year period over the last 100 years. Just stick it in the S&P 500. Look at this 11.15 and watch how that makes these numbers even more amazing. 11.15. Again, that's the worst 35-year period in the last 100 years. Watch what happens to these numbers then for a 40-year period. 1.741 million. Even 30-year period, 577,000. Folks, this is just $200 a month. Probably what a lot of people are paying for maybe a cable bill and maybe a couple of streaming services. $200 a month, increasing that by 2% a year, getting the worst case scenario in the last 100 years right here. 11.15. What if we get to 12.65, which was the median? We won't look at the best because that'd be 15%, but 12.65%. Watch how that different percentage, what was it again? 12.65, we're going to go and run that. That was the median for a 35-year period, 12.65. I just love running numbers for people. Look at this, folks. 12.65 for a 30-year period, have 762,000 for the 40-year period. 27 years old, doing this for 40 years, $200 a month. The median in the last 100 years, just stick it in the S&P 500, you'd have $2.593 million. But that's what we do on this channel. I just saw that headline. 80% of Americans don't have $100,000 in their retirement accounts. And I thought, well, it depends on where you're at. For example, if you can get that 100, well, I'm not going to go ahead. I'll run numbers on other videos, but if you already have got to that 100,000, if you've already done this and gotten up to, it'd take you 15 years, it looks like, to get to 100,000 in this scenario with a 12.65%. But if you have that earlier in your career and can put 100,000 in, let's just do this real quick. I will do this real quick. 100,000, just showing you the kind of numbers we can do on this channel. 100,000, and you don't even save another dime, because Charlie Munger said that first 100,000 is the worst. If you can just do that, coast the rest of the way. 100,000, after 30 years, you'd have 3.163. If you can get to that 100,000 in the first 10 years, and then the last 30 years of that 40-year period, you'd still have 3.163 without adding another dime. That's why Charlie Munger says, get that first 100,000, do whatever you can to get to that. And this is the kind of money you can look forward to, not adding another dime. We can run some other numbers in other videos, but I was so interested in seeing that the average American, 80% of them don't even have 100,000. And then I saw this stat that they're averaging 3.6, and I go, that's why they're not getting to 100,000 very quick. If they just put it in the S&P 500 and let it go, these are the kind of numbers you can be looking at. Like I said, get to the 100,000. I'm kind of rambling here, but I just love to run numbers for people. I just want them to see it doesn't take that much if you get started young and put it in the S&P 500. Get it where you can get these kind of returns instead of that 3.6%. That's your newest channel. We run numbers for people. Thanks so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Please share this with others. Let people know there's a channel out there that will run numbers for them. And we'll just keep running numbers for people. Thanks for watching.